What do teachers need to see to feel safe?
Well, I wish we actually had the Canadian government, because at the end of the day, the Canadian government, the German government, the Danish government, the Norwegian government all tried to first and foremost tackle the virus, and then started doing the safety guardrails that are needed in terms of reopening schools. And even though there's not a one-size-fits-all in the United States or in any of these places, what we need is we need to tackle the virus so that there's very little community spread. You need to have a system of testing so that you deal with the outbreaks, and then you need to have the safety guardrails, which include wearing masks, the physical distancing, cleaning and ventilation, reasonable accommodations, and you need to actually pay for that. And so what's happening in Canada is that they have space in different places so that they can have the classes, and then they'll have more and more kids there more and more of the time. But they start with mandatory masks and the physical spacing and taming the virus.
The AFT says at least $2,300 is necessary per student, Randy, in order to return safely. Right now, the Republican plan would provide $1,200 per student. So is there a compromise figure that you might be able to reach?
The Republican plan actually doesn't provide $1,200 per student because they take a lot of that money and they siphon it off to all sorts of different places and put a lot of strings on it. So the point we were trying to make is, and the other piece, the problem with the Republican plan is that the key to our plan was that you also fund the local and state governments so that you'd actually not lose teachers. Like what we tried to do with that $2,300 is we actually did the math of what was needed in terms of PPE, meaning masks every day, cleaning, bus routes, the nurses, and things like that. So the real issue becomes, do we want to make sure that kids have at least the masks every single day, and have the cleaning materials every single day, and have the ventilation systems changed? So frankly, the numbers have gone up, not down. I think that Senator Schumer and Senator Murray's numbers of needing for childcare and for schools closer to $400 billion is probably more accurate. Yes, we would love to be able to compromise with the Republicans, but we're not going to compromise on safety.
Mm-hmm.
There is some growing research, Randy, about younger children and the degree to which they either don't contract or don't pass on the coronavirus. Does it change your thinking around which levels of school we're talking about?
Every single day, our thinking gets changed because of the research and the data. So in the last couple of weeks, what we've seen is two pieces of data that were different. One, thankfully, younger children are far more resilient. And that's really, really, really fabulous news. But we've also gotten information from South Korea that teenagers, children from 10 on, actually spread just like adults do. So what you're seeing in places like Israel, which actually opened up to and rushed and then closed down and reopened, and you're seeing in other places, is that they're starting to open for younger children, and that they have older children on remote education. But we have to be, you're absolutely right, the data is really important, and I frankly wish the CDC was much more of an open clearinghouse on what the data is, that we didn't have to just get it from journals and just try to find it every which way. We should have a transparent and accurate data system so we all have the same data universe that we're relying on.
Randy, your support for potential strike action, should it be necessary, I think hit a chord. Has anything changed materially that would make potential strike action more of a realistic option now as we approach August?
Well, let me just say, we have been fighting this fight to reopen schools safely since April. We put out our report in April, a month before the CDC, and we have really tried to figure out how to do this because we know kids need school, and we know remote and in school, because kids have school. We know they need in-person learning, and we know that remote hasn't worked well. But the reason we raise the issue about, as a last resort, on a local basis, a safety strike action, is because we're really concerned as schools start opening in August that you got the deniers and you got the magical thinking. And frankly, in a place like Florida, Ron DeSantis is still denying that there is COVID. Donald Trump still denies that there's COVID. Yesterday, he walked away from wearing masks. We have to tame the community spread. And if other people are going to be reckless and are going to be irresponsible, then we have a bigger obligation, not just to our members, but to our communities and our children to keep them safe.
Randy, are chapters in Florida talking actively about strike action?
Well, what's happened now, interestingly enough, is that 80% of the chapters in 80% of the school districts in Florida that were supposed to start on August 10th are no longer starting that day. And so we have a lawsuit in Florida, but people are being very, very, very careful because this is a last resort. But we wanted to make sure our members knew that if they needed to utilize the last resort, the union would be there for them.
But Randy, to Vonnie's point, when would we expect that action to happen? In other words,
Look,
will there
if
be some
80%,
places in America when this first day of school doesn't happen?
There may be. I mean, what I'm saying is we're being we're not shy from telling the truth, and we're not shy from making sure that people know that safety counts. So yes, there will be different, if there's a safety strike, everybody's going to know about it. But what we're doing is we're really trying to get things safe. That's first and foremost. A safety strike is the last resort.
Randy, has there been any talk about hazard pay for teachers among your chapters? Is that any kind of a possibility at all? And by the way, we should also acknowledge that parents are extraordinarily worried, and also certain kids are worried because they need to go to school to get lunches, some of them. So there's a lot of constituencies here.
Well, we're also, at the same time as we're pushing on this, we're pushing to actually open up school kitchens more and have more grab and goes and use it for families, not just for students. We're actually fighting to get the digital equipment that kids need. So we're fighting on all fronts to get what kids need. And we're fighting for parents to have the childcare that they need. We're fighting on all fronts for all of these issues. The bottom line is, we can't sacrifice the safety and health of our students, of our teachers, and of our communities. And frankly, Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell and Mike Pence should have been doing a lot more about this instead of doing the kind of reckless threats that they've done in the last few days.